already done many times, but I think this is a unique situation because of the pandemic, we have a strong connection, easier connection with other people, and we can easily invite the authority of Judaism into our program. So you can consider for your own program to continue this kind of conversation in connection, in cooperation with ICRS, CRCS, or AJC, or you can establish your own connection. I'm aware that Mas Maufur, Mas Ipung also have connection with the Jewish Center in Drew University. So now it's very easy for us to have that kind of engagement. Okay, without further explanation of this program, so today I just want to repeat what the program you can expect and anticipate in this session, the last session of the program, is that I'm going to discuss about Jews of Indonesia, historically and also the present update. Then also I want to say something about sharing my quick one sharing about teaching Judaism. I already teach Judaism since 2006, not continuously because I have to finish my PhD. I stay abroad for a while, but more or less about 10 years or so, I taught Judaism in Faculty of Theology, Duta Wacana Christian University, so I can share something. Of course, my perspective is very much Christian perspective, even though I try to reach out also the material and the situation of Muslims and non-Christians perspective as well. Secondly, thirdly, I'm also offer to you to continue the discussion, the areas I already share with you. Hopefully all of you or many of you have a time to visit the link we share to you. I share 4 articles of me, and now in this session, I'm going to introduce another 2 articles that's important for you, hopefully, to help you out to give more sense of Judaism in Indonesia and also how to teach Judaism in Indonesia. Okay, now I'm sharing my, here, my, can you see all? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So especially for you, I need to say something else, the important one. I'm not Jews. I'm not ethnically speaking. I'm not an adherent of Judaism. I'm Christian and I'm coming from Indonesia. So my perspective is non-Jewish and moreover academic, and especially for the critical humanities and religious studies. So when we heard about Judaism presented by Dr. and Rabbi Rosen, that's very much coming from the Judaism perspective and Jewish perspective. Here we also have Ronnie, a Jew from Israel, but I don't think, right, Ronnie, you are not really, I don't know how you, I mean, maybe not have a strong engagement with Judaism.
I'm secular, yeah, I'm secular, completely secular.
Secular, okay. In Israel, there are 2 kind of people in this term, Hilonim and Datim, Datot or Datim.
Datim.
You are Datim. Then you are Hilonim. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Important because that's the first thing we have to aware of, that Judaism or Jewish people is not necessarily adherents or embrace or observant, or even they embrace Judaism is not necessarily an observant one. So like any Indonesians, you can be Christian, you can be Muslims, but different degree of attachment with your religious tradition. That's why my title is Jews at Frontier. Frontier in many sense. Frontier in the sense that Indonesia is also among the farthest areas, farthest region from Israel, as let's say Rabbi David yesterday mentioned the primacy of land of Israel for Judaism and for Jewish people. And Indonesia is very far. I'm not sure about the kilometer, maybe 5,000 kilometers away from the land of Israel. So in that sense, it's already frontier, especially when we reflect to the presence of Jews in history. It's truly a frontier. And I can say a little bit from the biblical passage why many Indonesians either reclaiming their Jewish heritage or Jewish descendants, or being enthusiastic to the Jewish culture or subculture or Judaic subculture because of certain passage in the Christian Bible or Tanakh in Jewish Bible. So these are the Jews at the frontier. My presentation about the history is of Jew Indonesia. I'm using map rather than slides. This is an experiment. This is my second experiment to present something using Google My Maps. I'm not supposed to say something brand, right? It's like a kind of a commercial part of that brand. But anyway, I just want to say something that Google have a lot of tools you can use for educational purpose. This is one of them, Google My Map. So here, the map of Indonesia, especially for Dr. Ilyas, Roni already be here, and also Dr. Mehak. That's I don't know whether you've been in Indonesia, but here in Indonesia, we are in a very strategic position between two big continents, Australia and Asia, and also big oceans, Pacific and India. And even though this become the very place of historical interaction for many, many centuries, not many aware of the presence of Jews in this territory. This is the presence of the Jews in the territory in the medieval period in 10th century. If you, many of you are Indonesian, you know Sriwijaya, one of the most important kingdom, Hindu Buddhist kingdom. That's Buddhist especially, have a strong Buddhist center in Sriwijaya. We have an evidence that there was a Jew in Sriwijaya in 10th century. Okay, he died in Sriwijaya even. And and this is coming not from the Jewish report, but coming from the Arabs, Muslim report about the Omani Jews. The name is Isaac al-Yahudi, died in Sriwijaya in the book Ajaibul Hind, Ajaib al-Hind, the marvelous India, the country of Dr. Meha. So because in medieval period, what's so-called al-Hind, Diyar al-Hind in Arabic literature, or what is Balad, Bilad al-Hind, it is not only India, but also including Southeast Asia. So which means there's a connection between Middle East, Yemen, especially Egypt, to India. It's also usually also include Southeast Asia. So we have a report, a Jewish presence in Barus, Fansur at the time, because Fansur or Barus was a place of the famous camphor. It's already known since early of the millennials. And Jews in Yemen, Yemenite and Egyptian Jews active in that trading as well. I mentioned here the manuscript from what are called Cairo Geniza. That's dated in the 13th century, 12th to 13th century, that mentioned the presence of Jewish trader in Barus that selling or buying, importing in Arabic, in Judeo-Arabic. This is not in Arabic, but Judeo-Arabic. Judeo-Arabic means Hebrew script in Arabic. Sorry, Arabic language written in Hebrew script. It is called Judeo-Arabic. So this is the Hebrew script, but in fact it's Arabic, Bahasa Arab. So here we have in Hebrew, fansur, the term fansur, and the term Al-Kafur Al-Fansur. So that's the two evidences in medieval period, the presence of the Jews. But afterward, again, sorry, we don't know the story about the organized community there. We knew the presence of the trader, but we're not sure about, we don't have any further evidence of communities, only traders. Because afterward, there's no more story about Jews up until 18th century, or earlier, sorry, 17th century, that we knew about several individual Jews. Here from India, what's so-called Cochin Jews, or Kochi from Kochi area in India, have a trading with Sumatra, either with Aceh or with Babus. We knew about that in 17th century, but only individuals. Then we also have information about individuals from Europe, Jews from Europe that active in either Dutch East India Company or VOC, or British East India Company. They work as a translator. So we have a report translator of trader of that company, representation of the company, working. The name is Abraham. That's working as a translator in Aceh, also in Banten, and also in Amboina, in Ambon areas, in 17th to 18th centuries. Then no more information, then we have a more substantial number of mostly Jewish males in following up the Dutch VOC, and then also joining with the presence of Dutch colonial period starting by 19th century. So that's the situation before the independent history. We have Jews in Malacca, we have Jews in Batavia and Surabaya, and also we have a substantial number in the end of 19th century, substantial number of Baghdadi Jews came from Baghdad, from Iraq to escape from Mamluk and Ottomans, the second Mamluk, because there's Mamluks in the medieval period and also Mamluk in the 19th century period, short period, and also Ottoman persecution. They escaped to India and then stopped by at Singapore and then Surabaya. They are Iraqi Jews. They are not European. They were not Dutch or sorry, not Armenian, but Dutch and Romanian and other German Jews and so on. Yeah. So you can see that this link is very much the same link that's diaspora from Armenia, Arab diaspora, Indian diaspora, and so on, also following up. So you can see that Jews also appear in this cosmopolitan, the classic, the pre-independent times of cosmopolitan period. Then we have, during in early 19th century, this is a more interesting period. There's more and more Jews, many of them working in the European Jews, what's called Ashkenazi Jews, from the Dutch, from German, Romania, and so on, and also Sephardi, what's called Western Sephardi. Western Sephardi is roughly very close to the Ashkenazi Jews, but they are coming from the Spain and Portuguese during the Inquisition. There's a time what's called Inquisition period where the Church of Catholic Church persecute Jews, and there's a forced conversion Jews into Christianity. And some of them wholeheartedly embrace Christianity. Some of them maintain their Jewish identity and Jewish ritual behind the door, and it's called crypto Jews because they hide their Jews. Or you're aware of that term in Islam is called taqiyah. So these Jews is was doing taqiyya. In 20th century, we have more Jews, not many, but roughly the estimation is 2,000 of them. The Eastern, the Ashkenazi Jews usually either as a trader or working in commercial or private sectors, or join the administration of the Dutch colonial. One of the famous name of that Jews was Abendanon, if you aware the name. Kartini, the person who collect Kartini's letters. And we have somehow circumstantial evidence that Kartini also read a work from Jew, not only Jew, but the Zionist Jew, the book of Israel Zangwill, out of Gitto. There's a kind of a circumstantial evidence that Kartini probably also read that book. Probably the book was introduced by her Jewish friend, including Abendanon, especially the wife of Abendanon. Abendanon was Western Sephardic, coming from the Western Sephardic family. So the name is, in fact, is coming from the Arabic. Abendanon is coming from the famous family in North Africa and Levant, Ibn Danan, and then it's come to Spain and then moved to the Netherlands, and they changed to Abendanon. Okay, that's the important. And also interesting thing is there was, this is one house, this is in Jalan Gajah Mada in Batavia in Jakarta, that once belonged to a Jew. And then we also testify the presence of Jew in Bandung, that's in Padang and Bandung, that producing the Zionist journal or the Zionist newspaper. The name is Eretz Israel, or in Dutch is Het Joodsland. That this is, even though it is Zionist, don't imagine that Zionists like try to control Indonesia and so on. No, Zionists only for Jews. They only for the communication medium for Jews. Then we have also here in Baghdadi Jews in Surabaya. Baghdadi Jews is different tradition from the European, the Ashkenazic. Baghdadi is coming from the Middle East, from Iraq, so they speak Arabic. They speak English because at the time they escaped from Iraq. There's a war between Ottoman and British, so they also, many of them were the holder of the British passport when they got to Indonesia, the pre-colonial Indonesia. They very active in Surabaya. So I think that, and then also, this translator in Aceh, in Barus, and also Padang was the center of the publication of this journal. Okay, that's the pre-independent history. Then we have a search of Jews during the World War II because of the many of the escapees from European West, especially from the Western European after the occupation of Nazi of Germany and the establishment of Nazi government in several of the European countries. Many Jews try to escape, and they visited Shanghai, and then they move. Some of them also make a transit from Shanghai to Indonesia to be a safe haven for them. So you can see the pre-independence Indonesia, Jews' presence were also, many Jews are considered Indonesia as a place of a safe haven for them from the persecution, from the Inquisition in Europe, because in many, this is not specifically in Indonesia, but in many cases, Inquisition, the discrimination and also persecution of the Catholic Church against Jews are very strong in Spain, in Portuguese, and somehow also spread out in other places in Europe. But when it's come to the areas of colonial, of Portuguese colonial or Spanish colonial areas, the persecution is somehow is much more lenient. That's why many Jews from the Dutch, from Dutch Jews who escaped from Spain, from Portugal. They also moved to Indonesia in order to have a more free air there. But you can imagine, because many of them, especially earlier than 19th century, many of them are males. They were mixed married with local women, and that's why somehow their Jewishness or disappear among the populace. That's the situation, and then there's a war, Japanese occupation, and Japanese occupation. Many of the Jews were interned in internship camps, Japanese internship camps. But the interesting story was that Japanese cannot differentiate between European and Asiatic. They have a category of Asiatic. So which means in the earlier Japanese occupations, only European Jews were interned, including German Jews, including Dutch Jews, Romanian Jews, and so on. But the Baghdadi Jews were safe until in 1943, a Gestapo officer came over to Indonesia and saying why these Jews were let free. And then afterward, then the Baghdadi Jews were also interned into the. And after that, the independence, and there's at least one Jews very active in independent. The name is, I don't have to mention the name. You can easily, if you want to ask this source, I can share you easily. There's one Jews that's very active in independence in Surabaya. Not only one, I think several others. There's also they sacrifice their money to help Indonesian independence. Then Jewish community have a kind of a short period of being flourished after the independence. Short period because you have Jews from the British Army, Jews from the Dutch Army, and they try to reorganize Jewish community. And but it's not easy, especially because Baghdadi Jews tend to be what's called rabbis call Orthodox Jews, while the Jakartas and Bandung's Ashkenazi Jews tended to be more secular, or either even embrace Christianity, or even Muslim, or Islamic. So that's the situation. It's not easy. In certain point, they simply cannot talk to each other because of different religious expectation. But then many of them, because of difficulties of situation, many of them decided to move. And if you imagine, even though yesterday rabbis mentioned that the importance of land of Israel for many of the Jews, majority of the Jews, at that time, it's not so. You know, Israel not yet even came to realization as a modern state. So Israel or Palestine is only one option for some. Many of them move especially to Australia and South California. Many of them. Others go to the England because they're holding British passport and also come back to the Netherlands. Many of them like that. So at the time, Palestine is only an option. It's not the main option. Then afterward, especially because Sukarno is very hostile to Western colonialism, and when in 1948, Israel established as a modern state, and 1949 Indonesian independence was recognized more globally because in 1945 only some countries of the world recognized Indonesian independence. It has to wait until 1949 that Indonesia fully recognized by the global community. And during 1949, David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, congratulate to Sukarno for the recognitions of Indonesia by global community. but Sukarno refused to respond. Yeah, Sukarno is very hostile to the establishment of state of Israel because not because necessarily because of the anti-Semitic ideas, but more on ideological anti-imperialism ideology that Sukarno is upholding. So for him, Israel is the last example of old force, old order force. The last chapter of Western colonialism in non-Western world. That's why he is very upset. This hostility is somehow affected to Indonesia. So there's in Arsip Nasional, in National Archive, there's a letter from the Jewish community to ask audience to Sukarno, but as far as my understanding and coming from the different literature, it's never truly replied by Sukarno to meet this group. But anyway, somehow Judaism is recognized in Indonesia through the presidential decree number 1, 1965, explicitly mentioned Judaism, even though it wasn't as a religion that's supported by the government. But anyway, Judaism were among religions that's allowed to exist in Indonesia. That's the situation, and that's decreased, and we have no more heard about Jews except descendant of the Jews that's prominent in public. If you know Marini, if you know Yapto, if you know from Pemuda Pancasila, if you know Renata, then if you know siapa lagi, that's they aware of namanya Urbah, siapa Urbah itu saya lupa. They are descendants of the Jewish family. Only them that truly appear in public, but in general, what so-called Jewish communities virtually not exist. They were Jewish people, individuals in Surabaya, in Jakarta, in Bandung, in several other places, in Minahasa, in North Sulawesi, but not as organized, and many of them absorbed into the local community and as a religious preference because of Indonesian situation, Indonesian discourse of religion, then they have to affiliate it with one of the 5 or 6 religions. So many of them chose either Christianity or Islam. Then basically we knew, but in fact the discourse of Jews are very, very strong strongly through the anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic rhetorics that always appear in Indonesian public. But in 2000, after the Reformation, then we knew many Christians who not yet talking about Jews or Judaism, but many Christians that embrace what's so-called Messianic Judaism that came from mostly from the United States, but also already appeared in 19th century of England and in the British Empire. That's very strong in the United States. Then the Christian who no more satisfied with the mainstream Christianity, they want to come back to the biblical culture, and they adopted Judaic or Jewish subculture into their ritual, into their theological position, and so on and so forth, what's called Messianic Christianity. And then some of them even converted to Judaism. And then some of them in 2000, or I think during 2000 and 2010 or 2012, there were some Jewish descendants that to reclaim through many ways, but prominently through internet. So they try to reconnect with the Jewish family that's usually from the Dutch family that intermarried with the local women, usually women's, then they have children, grandchildren, and grandchildren, and these grandchildren try to reconnect with their Jewish ancestry. And in 2012, there were some these the areas that's areas that's the story is coming from North Sulawesi, from Papua, from Surabaya here in Jakarta, especially Jakarta and other places, that they try to reconnect with their Jewish ancestral. And then in 2012, there were mass conversion, both from non-Jews who want to embrace Judaism. And some of them are coming from the Messianic Christian community, and then from the Jews or from the Jewish descendants. They organize an organization, but immediately they have some differences. Yeah, I think in my paper, my other paper is not yet published. I mentioned that it sounds like very Jewish to me because Jews is a. I think Ronnie can help me out in this part. There's an adage that if there are 10 Jews, there are 11 opinion, which means Jews within their community, they tend to be hostile to each other, or not hostile to each other, but they had to have a strong difference. So that community is also happening. This situation also happening among Indonesians, modern Indonesian Jewish community. And if we talk about halakha yesterday by Rabbi Rosen, then many of this is there's a debates among them whether they are halakhically Jews or non-halakhic Jews. Many of outsiders are saying that they are non-halakhic because they're not truly following up certain proper conversion, or they tend to be very much what I call contextual Jewish life. They try to mix up something or try to experiment this and that, especially because the main, not necessarily the main, but one of the main source of their Jewish knowledge were coming from the internet. So which means they have options. They not necessarily follow up one source, but they have an option to learn from different sources and different customs. Because like Islam with manhaj, Jews also have minhag, customs, or schools of thought, schools of rituals, or schools of philosophy or something like that. So that's the situation. And then up until now, they try to reorganize. One of the most interesting thing is use of Papua, because many of them are claiming, this is the picture, the Papuan Jews, the synagogue in Papua. This is the Papuan Jews. Some of them are, you can see the synagogue in the Yehudim Purat Chaim. Some of them claiming Jewish descendants coming from Peru. They are the descendants of Peruvian Jews that crossing, hopefully you can see this map, crossing the Pacific Ocean, reach Japan first, then move to Papua. I cannot, up until now, as a scholar, again, I am not as a Jew, I am here as a scholar of religious studies, as a historian, I cannot found more justified historical record, because the story talking about the Peruvian discrimination and persecution, but as far as my reading, there's not much persecution in Peru, even though there were inquisition from tracing back to Spain that specifically targeted Jews, but in larger part, Peruvian Jews were very having a lenient and stable life, more or less. But again, there's a lot of gap that's we or me as a researcher need to see what happened. So Papuan Jews is a very interesting case of the emergence of at least Judaic subculture, because not of them are ready to embrace Judaism. Many of them are either Christians, strongly Christians. You know the cases of Tolikara. It's very easy to you to find black Israel. Many of them are also joining the Messianic community. But anyway, if you are Jews, Ronnie, for example, or Rabbi Rosen visited Papua, you are very, very, extremely welcome. Okay, the last thing I want to make a point in this presentation, then I move to the second and the third part of the discussion. Why Jews emergence, the Jewish discourse emerged in Indonesia. My argument is stated in my coming article that it has to be dealing with the emergence of evangelical Christianity in Indonesia, especially evangelical Christianity that have a strong theological leaning toward dispensationalist theology, Christian theology. So if evangelical Christianity have so many branches, in general, they are very, very welcome to Jews and supporting. Many of them are supporters of Israel, but there are specific theological leaning, theological position that's having that's can include the narrative of Jews and also Israel, and this is very strong, especially 1970s. And then giving the imagination, and I can argue that even though there's non-existence of Jews after the independence in Indonesia, the Jewish reality were maintained through the Christianity, especially this group of evangelical Christianity. Not specifically evangelical, but many evangelical Christianity. Not all evangelical. I don't want you to have a misunderstanding. Many evangelicals simply and focusing only to the nurturing their own personal faith, but people or Christians who ready to embrace the Jewish discourse were especially evangelical who influenced by dispensationalist theological leaning. And especially it is very clearly appear in the Jewish symbols. If you're aware of, that's in Minahasa, there are menorah, the largest menorah in the world. And even though
Ya apa mau telepon aku Iki?
Oke, saya harus mute. Pak Andika, maaf. This is also our research with Mas Erham. Erham also here, Mas Erham. Last year, Ibu Sekar, we visited Kakidian, and Ibu Sekar and Mas Erham visited Kakidian. I visited Kakidian earlier, and we visited synagogue in Tondano and talked to the community there. Two different groups that's not really talk to each other. But interestingly, this menorah is not whatsoever connected to the Jewish community. The initiative came from Christian and Pentecostal lawmakers, local regional lawmaker, that having certain Christian imagination, and then he put this, and he endorsed the proposal of to build this menorah or kakidian. In Indonesian term is kakidian. In Minahasa, it's called Bukit Kakidian. So this is one example how the Jewish reality is established through the Christian narrative. And also, for example, this group also menorah in Kisar Island, very small island next to Timor-Leste. You can, yeah, you probably will surprise. There was also a menorah there, replicating in front of the Knesset in Jerusalem, in Israel. Not really replicating, but this kind of imagination you can see. So, okay, that's the one of the part of the argument of me why without Christian narrative it's rather difficult to easily understand the emergence of new Jewish identification and the emergence of Messianic Christianity and the connection with Indonesia and Israel, especially after 1993, the Oslo Accord is truly affected Indonesia as well. To a degree that there was the next, not next year, but years after the Oslo Accord, the peace Oslo Accord between PLO and Israel, then we testify the emergence of Indonesian Christian tourists in Israel. Up until now, before the pandemic, there are at least 26,000 of Indonesian make a pilgrimage or having business in Israel, including Indonesian Muslims. So you can see the importance of Indonesian narrative to that point. I think I have to stop here about the Jews of Indonesia. Either I just continue with my, I need to say a little bit why Indonesia is important and why Christian narrative is one way for many groups, including new identification of Jewish identity, is because of this. Indonesia has, for some Christian, or for some Messianic Christian, or some Jews of Indonesia, is the end of the earth according to the biblical narrative from Isaiah 45 verse 22, or Yesaya, Indonesian Bible, Yesaya 45, 22. Turn to me and gain success, all the ends of earth of say Arets, for I am God and there is none else. Berpaling kepadaku dan biarkanlah dirimu diselamatkan, hai ujung-ujung bumi, sebab akulah Allah dan tidak yang lain. So we have to understand that if you are coming from the biblical tradition or teaching biblical studies, then you aware of that Isaiah 40 and something is about Messianic age, the repentance of Israelites and Messianic age. And this is the synagogue in Tondano, Knesset Sha'ar Hashemayim, Minahasa, Sulawesi Safon, Indonesia. Yeah, that's the Hebrew word. Then I mentioned about the contextual Jews, because Jews in Indonesia has to adapt to Indonesian situation, need to contextual many things. One of the adaptation is the using of virtual minyan. If you're aware of Rabbi Rosen talking about minyan, the quorum for Orthodox Jews to establish a group or community or communal praying, it's called minyan, and for Orthodox it means 10 males. For more progressive Jews, Jewish community, which means it can combine between male and females, and even for more progressive Jewish community, even all males is possible to have minyan. Then because it's impossible for many of Jews scattered throughout the archipelago to have minyan, face-to-face minyan, physical contact, so they provide virtual minyan through line video call. So that's one way for them. So they are, how to understand that? This is my conclusion, very quick one. They are contextual. It is for some, they try to maintain the Jewish kashrut dietary law as much as possible by providing their own meal, cooking their own meal, so they can maintain the Jewish regulation law for that. But many are just, as far as you're not eating pork, it's okay. Just not as far as not eating lele, ikan lele, I don't know in English, carper probably. or eels, it's fine. As far as you try to maintain the minimum regulation, is fine. So they try to adapt. They love tempeh. Sorry, I'm talking like they are very alien. No, because this juice is coming from Indonesia. They are born in Indonesia. They speak Indonesian. They just speak Javanese. They speak Batak. They speak many things, Manadis, and so on. They think like Indonesian way of thinking. So that's why I endorse this term, contextual Jews. There are multiple belonging because they are also at the same time Japanese, at the same time Moluccans, at the same time Papuan, and so on. They're still learning. This is not very much established and stable yet. And the number is very difficult to gauge because, again, halakha, halakhic Jews are very difficult to pin down. Of course, if I interview them, they say I'm Jewish, but I don't know from the mainstream Judaism how to truly understand them, because many of their giyur is the certificate of conversion, are problematic for some other mainstream Jews. They're very young. Many of them is not yet coming to the age 50. Many leadership is still Generation X. Yeah, they are separated in many groups, at least maybe 4 or 5 or 6. I'm not sure about the number. I'm dealing with 3 groups, but in fact there are plenty others, and they still difficult to maintain unity. Yeah, they are. Yeah, the problem of what's so-called in Judaism, important term, mihu Yehudi. In Hebrew, it's called mihu Yehudi. Who is a Jew is a kind of eternal question for them as well. They questioning other group, you are not Jewish, kamu nggak Yahudi enough. The other coming back, oh, you are not Jewish, something like that. I limit the intervention on that. I'm not try to intervene to their understanding. For them, as far as they mention their Jewish is enough, because I'm using another category to understand Jewish identity, much broader, more sociological. And in general, even though it's not always appear, they are messianic in character, which mean, especially for Papuan Jews and Jakarta's group, that they truly portray Israel and Zion as not only a state, but also a redemptive within the redemptive metaphor, and even political. Yeah. Even though, from my own observation, Christian Zion is much more stronger for this aspiration rather than the Jewish community itself. But anyway, this is very dynamic and interesting. So this is my argument. They are very much within the Christianity. Even one group, when they try to be recognized as a civil society, organisasi massa, mass organization, they have to apply through church or Christian synod, one of the church of Christian synods. You know, Indonesia have many versions of Christianity, and usually the umbrella organization is called synod or synod. So interestingly, one Jewish group, in order to be recognized as a full organisasi massa, a mass organization or social organization, they have to apply through a church synod. Then also we have to understand this condition through the Messianic movement of Christian and Muslim. Okay, that's about Jews of Indonesia. And about teaching Judaism, I try to make it quick so we will have more time to discuss. Okay, the framework. My position in dealing with Judaism is always critical assessment, which means the diversity of Jewish identity is very important for my case, because rather different mood from Rabbi Rosen. Rabbi Rosen as a Jew himself, of course, he thinks more Jewish than me. me as an outsider is more critical, which means any expression, Jewish expressions, anti-Zionist, even though Neture Karta, Satmar Hasidim, that very anti-Zionistic rhetoric, having anti-Zionistic rhetoric, is important for me to, for my students to understand. You see, that's Jews having diversity in opinion, in certain issues, in issue of messianic, issue of many things. So important to have that, and especially within the, this is the second meeting of my class, discussing about what's so-called supersessionism. Supersessionism is very strong among Christian and Islam. That saying, to make it simply, saying that the later religions is abrogated the earlier one. So Christianity is replacing Israel, Jews, and Judaism. And then Islam came and then tried to say, oh, you're expired. The two earlier religions expired and is more valid. Something like that. That's supersessionism. Even though just to make it a very broad overview, that the three still exist up until nowadays. Even we can expand what's so-called Abrahamic tradition into Baha'ism. But the idea of supersessionism is still strong. At least I can say from my Christian perspective. Very, very strong. So it's important to address very early, to give a more balanced understanding afterward. Then also aware of the what's called the discourse of Allo-Semitism. Indonesia is known as a country that's very much antagonistic toward Jews and toward Israel, but that's not the only reality. We also having philo-Semitism. So anti-Semitism is person who even to the extreme, anti-Jews and Jews as a category, Jews as an abstract, Jews as a discourse or something like that. But we have another pole that so love Jews, what's so-called philo-Semitism. And in my class, both are problematic because putting Jews beyond history, putting Jews as simply a projection of your own problems or your own spiritual problems, of your own lack of something in your own religion. Jews as the other, the ultimate other. So both are problematic. And I think it's important, if this is my sharing, if you want to teach Judaism in Indonesia, to aware of this situation. It is very difficult to get rid of because this kind of framework are easily pointing out to the example. Why we love Jews? Oh, there's a Bible saying. In the Bible say Jews are the chosen people. Not understanding try to understand that chosen people is also historical expression, historical discourse. Is only in certain time is very strong and established, especially during the European situation, Jews in Europe and Jews in Islamic land. Then the idea of chosen people is gain importance. Okay, then the third one, the framework I endorsed to you, we not only talking about religious commitment, 3B, in religious studies called 3B, focusing on belonging, identity, what they believe, and what they have behave through ritual, through the certain. But we need to push forward, especially because Indonesia is unique in terms of we have a very mature interreligious engagement. We have among the first interreligious dialogue organization in 1980s. So among the earliest in the world. So we have that, and we have a strong heritage of living in multicultural world. So I think it's important for us to push not only to the Judaism as Judaism, but also talking about interreligious engagement And especially I'm aware of people from Gontor University, right? Somebody from Gontor University that's having an annual visit to synagogue in Tondano. But I can say synagogue in Tondano is not the only Jewish community. There are other Jewish community that probably want to engage with. Of course, they need to be very safe place. So we need to talk about interreligious engagement, and also talking about critical biblical and Quranic. I'm let the Quranic interpretation to you from Islamic University, but I can say a little bit more on biblical interpretation, more critical, in order to have a balanced understanding of Judaism, that Judaism is not necessarily immediately Old Testament religion, something like that. And teaching methods, of course, I can let you how to teach, but one important thing. So the first meeting in my class is usually talking about the class, and I usually make a survey. What do you understand about Jews? If you heard term Jews or Yahudi, what is your mind? Holocaust or Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and so on and so forth. I've tested this several times, and having get more an interesting response. Christian students tend to focus on Holocaust. Muslim students tend to talking about Israeli-Palestinian. But anyway, the second meeting, I'm talking about Jewish identity, the diversity of Jewish identity. The third meeting is about Jewish humor, because it's one way to understand the Jewish life. Jewish is a way of life. Jewish humor, and there's plenty of Jewish humor in internet. But I also still keeping my mati ketawa ala Yahudi, mati ketawa ala Rusia. That's inside are also Jewish humor. That's very interesting. And I ask students when they have Jewish humor, what do you think about Jews? How you can understand Jewish from this humor. And tools, Sefaria, if you want to discuss about Mishnah, Midrash, Talmud, Mishnah, and Midrashic and Rabbinic literature, Sefaria is provide us free tools, and even you can make notes on that. And also several materials in Indonesian. Unfortunately, this is the list of the materials in Indonesian. This is only the short list. In fact, it's plenty, because in fact, many Indonesians truly interested in Jews, and they translated a Jewish book or book regarding Jews. But the problem is many of the books like that are either antagonistic, very anti-Semitic, or if only translation, they they have a limited understanding of Jews or Judaism. So they either misrepresenting, mistranslation, and so on. I encounter so many kind of translation. And also novels. Elie Wiesel have at least three novels translated in Indonesia: The Judge, The Night, and The Dawn. And Chaim Potok, Namaku Asher, I can show you. And also Schindler List. Yeah, this is the Schindler List. If you can see my picture, not my presentation. This is the Schindler List presentation, translation, and this is Fajar, Elie Wiesel. And this is a wonderful book, Namaku Asher Lev, from a prominent Jewish literati, Chaim Potok. Okay, and I also have, unfortunately, this is still in English. If you want to talk about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this is one of I endorsed book, because this coming from both narratives. Sami Aklan from the Palestinian, I met him in Bethlehem 2 years ago, and Dan Bar-On, the late Dan Bar-On. So inside the book, you can have two versions of the single historical moment. So Balfour Declaration from Jewish perspective, Balfour Declaration from the Palestinian narrative. So I think something like that. The last point I want to make before we can discuss and engage more dynamic, I endorse. These appear in my papers among out of 4 papers I mentioned to you. The area that we can endorse the mutual research project in Indonesia, the Kairogenisa, because Kairogenisa is not only talking about Jews. This is a kind of Geniza is a storeroom in an extension of a synagogue, and usually traditional synagogue have that part, that any of the ritual or religious book that's outdated or become broken or something like that, you cannot destroy it, because in that book it must be a name of God, and you cannot destroy names of God. So this book can only goes to two: go to the Geniza, the storeroom, and or bury it. Geniza have a same root, Semitic root with janaza in Arabic, mean conceal, to conceal, janaza. And that's absorbed into Indonesia, jenazah, corpse, that has to be buried. So janaza, and geniza coming from the same Semitic root. So there are, Cairo Geniza is Geniza manuscripts, 200,000 fragments, 200,000 fragments that store in Cairo synagogue in Fustat, that brought to several, I think maybe 10 libraries in the world, in Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, Cambridge, and I think also in Princeton University and so on in other places, that up until now still ongoing to be understood, try to understood. And the story about Jews in Barus was one of the collection of Cairo Geniza that mentioned in my article, another article, if you want to visit it. Yeah, here in my academia.edu, there's an article, Ada Yahudi in Cosmopolitan Barus. I quoted from Cairo Geniza. Even I mentioned the picture and even the number, because this Geniza, this fragment, you can access digitally. Through, I also share the link in this article, so you can say that. So I mentioned here, this is a Judeo-Arabic script that's saying Al-Kafur Al-Fansur in Hebrew. Here, this the first one, the above is the Hebrew letter. Al-Kafur Al-Fansur. Yeah, it's not in Arabic, but in Hebrew. And this is also Al-Kafur Al-Fansuri. Okay, this is in Bodleian in Oxford, Bodleian Library. Yeah, I think that's coming from the Geniza. So what I want to endorse is, I don't speak Arabic that much. I only have some understanding, familiarity with Arabic for my dissertation. But you are speaking Arabic. I think you can use this uses to understand the Islamic society as well, because Cairo Genizas included the span of Jewish life from the early millennial, even maybe there's some fragments coming from the before Common Era, up until 19th century, which means they are talking also directly and indirectly about Islamic society. So if you teach Islamic civilization course, Cairo Geniza is one way to understand more. And inside the Cairo Geniza, there is also copies of Al-Ghazali in Judeo-Arabic or Arabic. What else? Several other Sufistic work. Then secondly, I also endorsed the project to discuss together about binitarianism or Trinitarianism in Second Temple Judaism, because there's always in part of the polemics among Christian and Muslims that's, Christians is pagans because we worship three gods. Even Messianic Christians charge mainstream Christianity is pagans. But if, in fact, it's not. Because the idea of binitarianism may be not Trinitarianism, but binitarianism, that's middle agency and so on and so forth, is very strong in Second Temple Judaism amongst some Jewish movement. So we can discuss that. That's Christian Trinitarianism, in fact, coming from this tradition, not from what always charged as paganism. And also comparative mysticism is already mentioned and touched upon as well by Rabbi Rosen about Kabbalah, of course, because Kabbalah in Indonesia, in some part of Indonesians, is related not to mysticism, but to conspiracy theory that's a Jewish secret society tried to control the world. And one of the guilty party is Kabbalah. And Judaism, I can tell about Judaism because that's my dissertation. And it's also talking about Christian Kabbalah within the comparative mysticism. So we're not talking about the strict category, Sufi, Christian mysticism, Jewish mysticism, but we encounter overlapping in between. And also Israeli-Palestinian from three religious perspectives, not only from Christian or Muslims, or only Muslims, usually only Muslims. Then other things we can also extend. And I mentioned these ideas in one of my articles I share with you as well. Okay, thank you very much for kindly seeing my presentation and being in this conversation. Okay, so I don't know how to, we don't have much, siapa ya?
Yeah, Pak Leo, is there?
Okay, maybe it's better to have a quick, oh, Mas Salahuddin here. Mas Salahuddin, you're supposed to be my...
Sorry, Pak Leo, I'm here, but I'm late. I'm sorry.
Okay, please, you can take over as a moderator, so I just sit and listen to you.
I think this without moderator is also fine. Okay, maybe I need to Pak Leo. I think you need answer the question in the chat room or directly. I think it is better. Okay. Yeah. From
Yeah, let me check. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a long list. I really try. If you have time, I hope I can respond to all of this question. Dr. Mehak, sir, is that true? Most Indonesian Jews change their name to Indonesian names. If yes, then it's rather, yeah. Many of, yeah. Okay, I have to show you the Indonesian because there's a combination or mixed experience of Jews of Indonesia. So if you can see, this is archipelago. Indonesia is archipelago, so different place, different situation. And many Indonesian names is either coming from the indigenous tradition, having local native names, or combination with with Dutch or Portuguese, or even maybe Spanish name as well. So, for example, in these areas, Maluku's areas, that's become the first among one of first Portuguese colonial or discoverer. I think at the time still discoverer set their foot. So many of the Moluccas have Portuguese name, the Fretes and so on, for example. And by saying that, many of Indonesian descendants of Jews maintain a Dutch family name. Yeah, so yeah, there's many Dutch family name. Or yeah, you are correct. It's like any other places, like in India, they also adopted Indonesian names or Indonesian family names. And family names in Indonesia is different from place to place because we have 400 ethnic groups, 700 languages. So yeah, you can imagine how complicated that. So that's to respond to Dr. Mihak. They changed, well, Mbak Aida, it's rather difficult to say explicitly because the way they change is not necessarily from in Indonesia. You have to understand many of them are Dutch Jews, which means they already have Dutch name since in the Netherlands. Either they're having their Hebrew name or they only have Dutch name. Either or is all appear because it's very, that's why the name of Jews at the frontier is very important. They are in the frontier situation. They are not necessarily in the full-fledged Jewish community like in Europe. They are having different and diverse experience. So they're not changing since very beginning or when they come to Indonesia. Probably they change if they convert to other religion, for example, Christians or Muslims. So you can easily name a Jewish name, even the modern time, with Muhammad, because usually marriage, like for example, the son-in-law of the late Professor Nurholis Majid was a Jew, and he adopted a Muslim name, something like that. So you have to understand that complexity. Don't imagine that Jews deliberately come to Indonesia and do takia. No, that's not the situation. It's the situation you have to take into account Portuguese, Dutch, British, and other force, and many of the Iraqi Jews having their own name already since in Iraq. Sassoon, Kaduri, Musri, Sayir, and so on. It's already there. So here in Indonesia, just they continuation that family name. Are there people coming truly from the lost 10 tribe? That's important point I have to mention. I forgot to mention. One point that's maintained the Jewish reality is the legend of the lost 10 tribe of Jews. In fact, it's not Jews, but the lost 10 tribe of Israelites. Israelites is Israel in the scripture. In the Quran, in the Bible, it's called Israelites. Not even Israeli. Israel is the modern Israel. So the lost 10 tribes of Israelites. This is a legend. Very difficult for us in modern times to just verify that. I heard so many stories about it directly or from my reading. I encountered directly with person from North Sumatra that saying Bataks are one of the lost 10 tribes of Israelites. Why? Because the agama Batak asli, Parmalim, maintain the 7th day as the day of rest, like Jews, something like that. But that's why important for us to teach Judaism from the critical way, because convergence, religious ritual convergence is not immediately connected to the Israel or Jews or any religion you want to try to connect with. Having the day, the 7th day as the day of rest, not immediately verify that you are the descendant of the Israelites. Israel, the lost 10 tribe is already 7th century before Common Era. Up until the present day is more than 2,800, 2,700 years ago. We need a more stronger historical verification. And I think Israel rabbinical encounter this kind of claims all the times. Javanese, Bataks, Papuans, some tribes in Moluccas try to say by saying, the names or something like that. But the affinity of the name cannot immediately connect us. And again, it is even so, it is Israelites. Not Jews is a later category after the exile of Babylonia. It's not earlier than that. So my hypothesis, this is hypothesis, so which means it needs to be proved or to be falsified. Yeah. In science, we need to be falsified any claim. My hypothesis is the emergence of modern state of Israel truly give a realization, especially in 1967, when Israelites won the 6 Days Wars against Arabs, it's truly give a realization of biblical narrative for some Christians. And then they try to, I'm not saying they are lying, no. But this is how religious imagination work. Maybe they're right. What I'm saying is it's simply difficult to verify historically. Begitu ya, Mas Samsu. Then Mbak Muriana, could I get more explanation about creolization? Yeah, this is an anthropological term. Creolization is coming from the Skinner's anthropologists from America. That talking about, in fact, creolization is for Chinese in Southeast Asia, who mostly males come to Southeast Asia for living, to seek fortune, and then they marry to local people and absorbs a hybrid culture. And you can easily see, and in Singapore, it's maintained among the, I cannot really correctly identify as babah or something, or apa namanya? Ya, keturunan ya, pokoknya turunan. I lost the names. That they mix up. I'm not sure about creolization among the Jews in Indonesia, but what I'm saying is the post-Reformation Jewish community is coming from the Indonesian experience first, rather than Jewish experience first. They try to reconnect, reclaim their Jewish ancestral heritage. So different from creolization. Creolization, people from outside try to adapt to the local. Here is already gone for some period, lost, then try to recover it. Okay, thank you. Mas Khairul Anam, yeah, YouTube, okay. I let that YouTube thing for you to try, to check. Pak Ezra, but how did the Jews conceive Indonesia as safe haven? Is it because they thought Indonesia? No, this safe haven is before even earlier period. For example, during the Inquisition. At the time, Islam is also at the same time still missionizing Indonesia. The 16th century, we cannot come yet to Indonesia as an Islamic territorial. There are plenty of process. The process of missionizing, Dakwah is still ongoing. And at the same time that Jewish translator individuals come over as translator, as commercial, as an army of VOC, for example. Only individuals, so don't push it too much to conspiratorial theory. They try to control. No, it's far from that. It's simply people try to seek safe haven, or very adventurous person to come to this very far away land. Yeah, so in that term, they escaped from the Inquisition. Many of the Jews. What I'm saying is also in Malacca, because Malacca there were two communities. One is new Christians, which means Jews who forced to convert to Christianity, and a full Jewish community in the later period. In that sense, and secondly, about the safe haven for Baghdadi Jews that escaped from Iraq. It's not necessary Indonesia is the only place, because they also visited, stopped by at India and established their presence there, and then Singapore, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Surabaya. But in certain sense, it's also a safe haven. And thirdly, the experience of European Jews to escape from German occupation, especially from Shanghai. So that's in that sense, not necessarily because Christian or Muslim. I think that's, I think, Pak Ezra, these are another areas we can pursue further. I'm not finished yet with the about 4,000 pages of this Eretz Israel newspaper. There are 4,000 more, even more pages. And it is in Dutch. I not speak Dutch, so I have to ask as somebody to help out, probably your question can be respond from that material, historical material. And Dr. Mehak also added about how some tiny local Jewish communities said, yes, that's what I'm saying before, and that one in Manada they even get to build their own. Yes, that's also there are more than one, and in fact, according to my source and Mas Irham also with me at the time to make an interview with them, there are even more than saying. Many, I interview one that's maintained their Christianity, and they say, no, I'm just, my ancestors are Jews, but no, I'm now Christian, I'm happy with my Christianity. In fact, according to our sources, there are some families that's descendant of the Jews, but not decided to embrace Judaism. Okay, then inaugurated. I forgot. I have to check the
from
date
Adam,
of the.
Pak Leo, from Pak Adam. To
Yeah.
Pak Leo, to your knowledge, do the Indonesian Jews have certain dream or expectation that one day Judaism would be officially accepted?
Well,
One of
yeah.
Indonesian official religion.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about from the regulation perspective first, because there's a misunderstanding. We are always saying that in Indonesia there are 6 recognized religions, which is true. But in popular mind, this of tendency is not the fixed one, but tendency. Indonesian tendency to say that 6 is the legal one, so beyond 6 is illegal, right? But according to the presidential decree, that already elevated into the law number 1, PNPS 1965. No, what's so-called recognized is religions that's supported by the government because of the population, because of the number of their adherents, the memberships. Why 6? Because 6 is the largest. If Baha'ism is one of the largest, then 7. Something like that. But it is an ambiguity. Ambiguity is, which means, because it's stated clearly, I need to open, but okay. Later on, I can show you I think you know the correct wording of that. So even though 6, the law said, meskipun hanya 6, but other religions is also accepted, except as far as they maintain or they agree, they not violate the existing law, something like that. I'm paraphrasing it. And those religions is, the examples given is Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Taoism, and one other. So which mean, in fact, no need to be Judaism to be recognized. The problem is more on how is recognition is appear in our ID card. Because in ID card, before 2017, only 6. Even before the reparation of Confucianism, Konghucu, into the 6 recognized religion, only 5 can possibly put in our ID card. That's the struggle of one group. I knew only one group. Other, I'm not sure. But only one group, the leader of this one group, tried to endorse that. How about if we can put our Judaism into our ID card? In terms of recognition, any beyond the 6 religions is acceptable to exist in Indonesia according to the law. Then, Mas Adam, again, to your do the Indonesia certain dreams. Oh, yeah. But Aida, don't eat lele too. Okay, that's why Shiism, in many, not only Shiism, but Ahmadiyya, especially because Ahmadiyya have an office as a mosque in Haifa in Israel. I've been there. I met the imam there. So Ahmadiyya and Shiism is always connected to Zionist thought to control Indonesia and so on, to destroy Islam. How would Indonesian Jew project future of their religious communities? That's why I endorse that meeting, because it cannot be from their side. There's only one person is very active in interfaith, but the rest is simply need to be reached out. So that's why it's important for us to also take part of this issue.
Mbak Witri, Pak Leo,
Yeah,
why Jews seem to left in silent here? Is that because of political tension in Israel or religious
political
persecution or both?
political tension. I'm not aware of the immediate persecution, except probably bullying. We cannot uh, avoid that bullying, but I'm not sure about that even. I was not serious bully, but I was considered Jews by some of my friends because I'm dealing with Jews issue. Saya dibilang Yahudi gitulah. Tapi ya nggak terlalu serius. I am not aware of that persecution, but the only maybe frightening for Jewish group or Jewish people in Surabaya was in 2007 when there was a huge FUI, Forum Umat Islam, if I'm not mistaken, make a demonstration against the Gaza blockade, and then they went to the synagogue in Surabaya. The synagogue in Surabaya they have fence, but it's like a very, very symbolic fence. It's not really a fence. But after that issues, and they truly make a high fence because it's truly frightening for them. And afterward, the properties was sold out to other party. And I read at least one article talking about one of the Jewish Surabaya escaped to California and saying Indonesia is inhabitable for Jews, more or less like that. So yes, that's the concern. Even though it's very easily for you to find people claiming being Jews in Facebook, very active in that.
Okay.
Okay, then
In 5 p.m. Maybe we
yeah.
Pak Leo,
Yeah,
from Pak
you
Ezra
go
Iskandar.
and I will go. If you want me to stop, I will stop.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, it is maybe the last question. Not question, I think. From Pak Ezra Iskandar. Pak Leo, please share 2 or 3 Jewish joke to us. It may be our conclusion.
Oh, I can tell it more fluently in Indonesian rather than in English. Rather than in English. Sorry for Mehak.
Like to sure making joke, yeah.
Is the Jewish joke I always saying in my class, and coming from Jewish people, so it's safe. Sorry for Dr. Mehak, Roni, and Dr. Ilyas because I'm going to tell in Indonesia. Jadi ceritanya begini, ada rabi, ada pastor, ada pendeta. Oke? Biasa toh, ini joke antar iman. Ditanyain, satu, apa yang dilakukan dengan penghasilan Anda dalam hubungan Anda kepada Tuhan? Siapa namanya, si pastor, pendeta dulu bilang, oh 1/10 dari penghasilan saya itu untuk Tuhan. Sebagai ungkapan iman saya. Pastor karena tidak menikah dia bilang, oh 50% untuk Tuhan. Lalu Rabi bilang, oh kalau saya seluruh penghasilan saya itu untuk Tuhan. Begitu saya terima di tangan saya lemparkan ke atas semua untuk Tuhan. Saya hanya ambil yang jatuh ke tanah.
Sama aja namanya.
Ronnie, Dr. Mehak, I tried to make it in English. I don't know whether it's funny in English, but talking about three leaders, Catholic priest, rabbi, and Protestant pastor. The question for them is simple. What you do with your own your own apa namanya pendapatan? Your own
income.
Property or income.
Your income. What you do with your income? And the Protestant pastor saying, oh, 10% tithe goes to God. 10% of my income goes to God. Okay, nice. And pastor, the Catholic is, because he's not married, 50% of my income goes to God. And then rabbi say that
Throughout.
all income goes to God. Whenever I take the money, I will throw out to up so God can pick his part. I only taking all the money left on the ground, something like that. I don't know. It's
Nek nangsang di pohon disogrok-ogrok.
okay. So that's all. Anyway, I hope we are not stuck.
Thank you so much for the translation. You have a good sense of, thank you so much for the translation, because you have a really good sense of humor. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. We have, don't forget, after this, Mas Akbar will send you by email the survey. Please fill the survey because it's very important for us. And hopefully we still have in touch in different issues, in interfaith issue, in Judaism issue, in minority groups issue, whatever. So please don't stop in this conversation. Hopefully we can continue with another project and we can work together to have more.
10% of your salary.
Yeah, so I return to Mas Ahmad Salehuddin as my
Thank you,
moderator.
Pak Leo. Give applause to Pak Leo.
Thank you, Pak Leo.
Leo, Pak Leo.
Thank you very much, Leo.
I hope 10% for me.
We have to end now. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam.